Good morning, everyone, and happy Tuesday. It happens to be one of my favorite days of the week. Every Tuesday, we do what we call our Light the Torch ceremonies, where we share the up and coming new releases of aspiring authors and their books. And today, I am joined with Elizabeth Reece. She is the author of The Patterns and Chaos, The Untreated Mind. And I'm so excited to have her here today and kick off her book, which is now available all across Amazon. And we're really excited to get started. So welcome and congratulations, Elizabeth, on your new book.
Thank you so much, Hannah, and all your team. It's been a very, very interesting process. I knew I wanted to write something. I didn't quite know that the story would have played out in the way that it did, but here we are at last, a year after I finished it. So it's great.
So you are this truth teller, survivor, a force really of resilience. Let's start with the heartbeat of this book. What prompted you to want to write a book like this?
Well, so at a higher level, although I hope that it's layered in as much as it can, people can read the story and appreciate the story and the journey. And at the core of it, it's one woman's process and journey to change her reality, to put her past behind her, but also to improve her present situation and circumstances so that she can enjoy a peaceful, successful, abundant future. But what happens is that her present situation seems in some very dangerous and detrimental ways, and she ultimately has to realize that her outer world is not a safe place, despite all of her efforts to put herself into a situation where she could potentially have the future of her dreams. And when she realizes that she's in real danger, she has to track back rather painfully to figure out how it's happened. And now that she's there, I mean, a great, it's a Japanese proverb, which is, if you find yourself on the wrong train, get off at the next stop. Because stay on the train, it's gonna be a costly and potentially painful journey to get back to the beginning. And so Liza Montgomery, the character in the story, realizes in her present that she is still on the wrong train, despite believing that she had got off. And now she's on it. It's the most dangerous train journey that she's ever been on. And she has to get off. So she jumps off the train again, because, been trying to jump off a while. So she jumps. And then the second half of the book is about, how she survives.
So, Elizabeth, who is your potential reader? Who would you love to just see pick this book up? When you envisioned writing this book, who are you writing this book for?
Thank you. Great question. When I decided definitely going to write the book, and I knew what I was going to, the story I was going to tell, I had already spent some time around groups that were very focused on the breaking of trauma bonds, understanding narcissistic abuse, and it was very clear to me that I was in a difficult situation myself, but I was in a position where I was able to tell my story freely. I didn't have responsibilities or children, and I wasn't in immediate fear for my physical safety. So I felt like the only way I could honor what so many people go through in intimate relationships, in workplace, in familial situations, the only way I could honor that and be of service was to get as visible as I possibly could for my own safety, but to be able to tell a story that was deeply personal, but also universal. And it's told from, because there isn't much dialogue in the novel. So, and it's almost deliberate, because I wanted readers to understand that what happens when we are experiencing cognitive dissonance is that we become trapped in thought loops, and we become very insular in our own heads. You know, we're trying to figure out what the bloody hell is happening, because we're having our psychology and our nervous system, and so the rumination is incessant. The noise in our heads is incessant. So I tell the story through that thought process, and the reasoning and the reflection on how the character deals with that, and how she stands relatively firmly in her strengths, her truths, who she is, and finds a way to disconnect from the what's the term, this shared delusion that everybody else tries to create. So yes, I would love it to speak to people that are trapped in the conditioning of their workplaces, in the conditioning of staying silent within family scenarios, and certainly within our closest partnerships, the people that we think are going to keep us safe and love us, who choose to treat us in ways that are absolutely unacceptable.
So when you came up with the title, which I think is very a very profound and bold title, The Patterns and Chaos of Untreated Minds, how did you even come up with that?
Well, when I came to France, I knew I wanted to write a novel of some kind. There had been things that had happened in my life up until that point, which were very clear patterns. So people had been diagnosed with certain personality. In several people I knew well to suicide. I was having long and deep conversations with people around their work-related situations, around their personal relationships, and things like addiction and domestic violence soared during that particular period. And so myself being in recovery, coming up 7 years now, I was very aware of the patterns, the repeated patterns that our conditioning brings to our behaviors. And so if we repeat our patterns, the world is also full of chaos. And our patterns can create our own chaos. And the Untreated Minds was from me trying to understand my own pathology and my own story and my own journey, to see, was I surrounded by people who are untreated, or was I still untreated? Because I had done a lot of work on, my resentments, my relationships, things that had hurt and harmed me, and I stepped away from a lot of those things, and yet these patterns were still playing out. But what happened was I was distracted. Like, this relationship happened and this relocation happened, and my development stopped as I was forced to focus on other people's issues and other people's challenges. And because I became a coach, and because I became very concerned with the human condition and people's path from suffering to flourishing, I had to kind of go, well, I can see that they're untreated. I can see the patterns of their dysfunction and maladaptions. But why am I still in it? Why am I still putting up with it? So at first it was, born from me dealing with lots of people's untreated patterns and chaos, and then having to evaluate my own. So it just sort of made sense to me. It's a long title, but it's kind of universal. Patterns and chaos are what the world runs on.
I think the question that you said, am I still untreated, or are the people around me? I think is when you're talking about women who are trapped in circumstances, relationships, they may not see it from the outside looking in. Like, is this a me thing, or is it the opposite? You talk about the emotional recovery. You've talked about, reclaiming your voice, sharing your story. So my last question to you is, when women are reading this book, because I feel like that's primarily who will pick up this book, women are looking for true ways to really heal, to really break those things that you're talking about, feeling trapped, healing of the mind, healing of the habits, honestly, because a lot of the stuff that, women go through when they're in an abusive relationship, it comes from habits, things that they're used to. So when something foreign comes in to try to break that habit, I guess what my question is, how do you think this book can help them to really see, like, hey, you know what? I can leave this situation. I can see the light at the end of the tunnel. I don't have to live like this anymore. And my mind can be healed. The chaos can stop. Because a lot of times we're attracted to chaos, which is not a good thing. So how do we break that cycle?
It's such a brilliant question. First of all, I absolutely know that it's possible. I'm sitting here having jumped off the train, having jumped out of the plane, and I'm still free falling. I've moved 9 times in the last 2 years. I found myself in a country that I hadn't intended to come to, with a language that I didn't speak, having to deal with all of the admin and the paperwork to try to build a life for myself. And what I found here, in all of my chaos, that was not necessarily of my own making, although I had to accept what was my part in it. I've found such kindness and friendship and community, which I would not have found had I not been brave enough to jump out of the plane and to trust that it was better than where I was. Because I had always been focused on improving my present to improve my future. And if I didn't improve my present, I was never going to improve my future. And the book is full, and again, this is what I'm saying about it being layered, of tips and tricks, if you like, that I used from my recovery, from addiction, So yes, I went through a 12-step program, but you know, that clarity, the clarity I got when I sobered up. So I understood addiction at its very base level. So I understand the dopamine and what chemically happens in our body. So I understood that what somebody was trying to recreate in my relationship was addiction. And I was very fortunate because I had the tools to counter it. Like I knew, stop trying to turn me into a crazy person. I'm sane. I was restored to sanity, and you're trying to bring me back into your crazy world. And I was able to hold my own to a degree in that respect. But there's so much that goes on in our psychology and in our physiology that affects us when we are in those scenarios. And, you know, I'm still a member of a lot of groups, and it's easier said than done to step away. And it is a process. It doesn't end when we step away. Even if that person or that workplace or whatever is in our rearview mirror, we still have a lot of work to do. Writing the book was incredibly cathartic. Writing in itself is incredibly healing. There's hope. There's hope on the other side of it, and hope is a starting point, but trust is where it's at, and self-trust. Abusers do not see your strengths. They don't see our strengths. They leverage our weaknesses, and not letting that in was huge for me. Absolutely huge, because in every scenario, whether it was work, whether it was, you know, a sibling, whether it was this particular partner, they weren't seeing me. So I could say it's not personal, even though it was so personal. And I don't know if that's helpful. It's really hard to grasp that we must retain our own humanity in the face of scenarios that try to dehumanize us.
So you've done the hardest part, which is writing this book, sharing it. What is next for you? When you're not writing, what are you doing?
Well, France is great. I have a dog, and Johnny, my Egyptian street dog, plays a big part. She sat next to me as I was writing. She kept me safe. She came into my life at a point in the story where getting a rescue dog was the dumbest idea, but it wasn't my idea. I didn't choose her. Something in the universe chose her for me. So I spend a lot of time with Johnny out in the open, because nature is a great healer. Connecting in nature, reflecting, finding, asking for inspiration, asking for guidance. We will find it in nature if we look, if we ask. We'll find some kind of truth, some kind of support there. I write. I'm actually hoping to go back into work remotely shortly for a company that I used to work for, and this has been on my mind a lot, because part of me thinks, am I going back? But actually, no, I'm stepping forward. I'm not the same person I was when I wrote the book. I'm not the same person who lived the story. And I'm not the same person that worked with that organization 17 years ago. So I'm really, really excited to bring this evolved version of myself back into a workplace, hopefully more useful and more effective. And I coach as well, and I sponsor, and I'm always here for people that want to talk about these things and these challenges, and that may want some additional support in that area. And I really want to keep writing. Maybe one day it'll be chick lit rather than some of the dark side of positive psychology. But right now, I think taking people on a journey from suffering to flourishing is my focus.
Well, Elizabeth, thank you so much for sharing your story, your truth, your power. And to everyone who is watching today, you can support Elizabeth by grabbing your copy of The Patterns and Chaos of Untreated Minds and really just take that deep dive in, or as Elizabeth shared, take that jump and dive into this book and also share this message. And you can find this book all across Amazon. It is an ebook today. Today is her big day. And so grab this book, read it, share it, and really, really share your thoughts on the book. Give her a review. I think that this book is going to be a very powerful way to show women that they don't have to be trapped, that they can take that jump, that leap of faith, and really find the love and the beauty that life is just waiting to give them. So thank you so much, Elizabeth. How can people connect with you and follow your journey?
So my website, which also contains my blogs, that's quietwaters.space. I think all of my socials are actually at the back of the book. But if people who do pick up the book want to actually see the movie, I started a web Instagram page called @Seeking Quiet Waters. It's @seeking_Quiet Waters, I think. I should know all of this off the top of my head, but literally, if you go back, everything. I mean, it's a novel, right? It's women's fiction. It's women's fiction. But if you want to see the story play out, running around with a chainsaw, if you want to see the house, the murder house that's referred to in the book, if you want to see Johnny arriving on her first day, if you want to see the fig tree and the kiwis and, how somebody survives in France in a caravan and makes friends and so on. If you want to see the story, it's all on that Instagram page. It's lots of fun. I mean, as challenging as it was, there was so much joy in the journey too.
Well, thank you for sharing your masterpiece with the world. And for those of you who are just tuning in, we are lighting the torch for the book, The Patterns and Chaos of Untreated Minds, written by Elizabeth Reece. My name is Hannah Olivas, and I am from She Rises Studios. And stay tuned as we continue to follow Elizabeth's journey. Grab your copy today all across Amazon. It is now available in ebook in 13 different countries and is circulating through your favorite retailer as we speak. Thank you so much, Elizabeth, for being here today with me, and congratulations on your new book release. And we can't wait to see what's next for you.
Thank you, Hannah. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.